The desert wind carried a strange sadness that night. It whispered through the canyon, stirring the dying embers of a campfire beside the San Miguel River. A woman sat there, her shawl drawn tight, her eyes fixed on the black water that glimmered faintly beneath the moonlight. Her name was Evelyn Ward, 30 years old, a widow of 2 years, and a traveler who had lost her way both on the trail and in her heart. She had left the small mining town of Dry Creek 3 days ago, riding a tired mare and carrying only a canteen, a revolver, and the ache of a life that no longer had direction. Her husband, a railroad man, had died in an accident out near Tucson. Since then, the world had felt silent, every road empty, every sunset hollow. But that night, as she rested by the river, she wasn't alone. She heard the horse before she saw him, the sound of hooves in the distance, soft but deliberate. Her hand instinctively reached for her revolver, though her heart beat louder than the wind. The rider appeared through the dark like a shadow made of bronze and moonlight. He dismounted silently, his movements precise, and stood a few paces away. He was Apache tall, broad-shouldered, with long black hair that glistened like wet obsidian. His bare chest bore the faint marks of battle, and his eyes, sharp, dark, unreadable, met hers for a single, endless moment. "Who are you?" Evelyn managed to ask, her voice trembling only slightly. The man didn't answer right away. He looked around the campfire, at her horse, her bag, and then finally back at her. "Your fire is too bright," he said in a low, calm voice. "It calls to the wrong kind of men." Evelyn hesitated, unsure whether to thank him or raise her gun. "I'm only passing through," she said. "Didn't mean to light a beacon." He took a step closer. "Out here, every light means something." His tone wasn't threatening, only heavy with something ancient, something that made her feel small beneath the open sky. She realized she was trembling not from fear, but from a strange awareness of him. "What did they call you?" she asked. "Talon," he said after a pause. "Of the White Hawk clan." The name carried weight as if the wind itself respected it. He sat across from her without invitation, his gaze steady on the flames. For several minutes, neither spoke. The fire cracked softly, and somewhere far off, a coyote howled. Evelyn felt the weight of his silence pressing against her heart. It was the kind of silence that carried stories, loss, battles, the loneliness of men who lived between two worlds. "You don't fear me," he said finally. "I don't know yet if I should," she replied. He almost smiled, and the faint curve of his lips sent a strange warmth through her. They spoke little after that. He shared his dried meat with her, and she poured him some of her last water. When she asked what brought him there, he said he was hunting not animals but memories. She didn't understand, and he didn't explain. The night deepened. The stars seemed closer than they ever had in her life. Talon's eyes glimmered in the firelight as he looked at her, not with desire, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition. Evelyn turned away, but she could feel his gaze like heat on her skin. Her heart pounded as if something inside her had been asleep for years and was just now waking up. When the wind picked up, he rose silently and said, "The night is not safe. You should not sleep here alone. Where should I go?" She asked. He hesitated, then nodded toward the canyon ridge. "There's a cave, not far. I'll take you there." She followed him, her footsteps uncertain, her breath quick. The cave was small but dry, the air cool against her face. Talon lit a small fire inside. When their eyes met again, something wordless passed between them, a current neither of them wanted to name. Evelyn sat down beside the flames, feeling the weight of the night pressing closer, as if the desert itself held its breath. She didn't know it yet. But this single night, one stolen from time and silence, would mark her soul forever, and when morning came, the world would never look the same again. The cave smelled of earth and rain. The wind howled through the canyon outside. But inside it was warm, the kind of warmth that comes from two people breathing the same air, both aware of how near they are to something they can't name. Evelyn sat close to the fire, her shawl wrapped tight. The flames painted her face in soft gold, and every time she glanced toward Talon, she found him already watching her. His gaze wasn't bold, but it wasn't shy either. It was the look of a man who had lived his whole life reading silence. He sat cross-legged, sharpening his knife with a slow rhythm that seemed older than time. The light glimmered off the steel and the silver beads woven into his long black hair. The faint scent of smoke and sage drifted between them. "You travel alone?" he asked finally. She nodded. "For weeks now. That is a dangerous way to travel." "I've been through worse," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. He stopped sharpening the blade. "No one goes through worse without leaving something behind." Evelyn looked into the fire. "I left a husband," she said quietly. 2 years ago. He died working on the railroad near Tucson. Since then, I don't know where home is anymore." Talon's dark eyes softened. "Home is not a place. It is what still breathes inside you when the world has taken everything else." His words were heavy, yet somehow kind. She didn't know why they stung. Maybe because they were true. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm outside grew stronger, rain hitting the rocks in soft bursts. Evelyn found herself listening to his breathing, deep and steady, as if the world outside couldn't touch him. "Do you live near here?" she asked. Talon's jaw tightened. "Not anymore. The White Hawk clan once hunted these lands. But the army came, and the settlers. The river runs red with what used to be ours." Evelyn turned to face him. "I'm sorry." He gave a faint, bitter smile. "Do not be sorry for what you did not take." She wanted to say more, but his tone silenced her. The fire flickered, throwing his shadow against the cave wall a tall, proud shape with scars that told their own history. Minutes passed. Then, quietly, Talon reached for a bundle of dried herbs and threw them into the fire. The smoke rose in spirals, filling the cave with a faint, sweet scent. "What is that?" she asked. "Sage and cedar. It keeps away bad spirits and memories that should sleep. Does it work?" His eyes found hers again. "Sometimes." The answer made her chest ache. She could feel something shifting between them, not love, not yet, but recognition. Two souls lost for different reasons, drawn to the same quiet fire in a merciless world. When the storm eased, Evelyn lay down on her bedroll, her back to the cave wall. Talon stayed awake, tending the flames. She watched him in the dim light, the lines of his shoulders, the way his hair caught the glow. There was a gravity about him, something that pulled her closer even in silence. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "Because once someone helped me when they should have run." "Who?" He paused, his voice low. "A woman I could not save." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He looked at her finally, and their eyes locked. "Do not be sorry," he said again. "Just remember the night the desert was kind to you." The words lingered between them like a promise. Evelyn couldn't sleep. Every sound of the crackling fire, every shift of his breath made her pulse race. And when he finally moved closer, only to place another log on the fire, she felt disappointment pierce through her heart in a way she didn't understand. Outside, the rain stopped. The moonlight spilled into the cave entrance, brushing over his bare skin, over the lines of his muscles and the faint marks that spoke of battles long past. Evelyn's heart ached, not out of desire, but because she suddenly knew she would remember this man, this night for as long as she lived, and she was right by dawn, when the first light touched the canyon walls. The storm was gone, and so was Talon. All that remained was the faint scent of cedar smoke, and the echo of his voice in her memory. "Remember the night the desert was kind to you?" The morning light crept slowly into the cave, chasing away the shadows that had wrapped around Evelyn through the night. She stirred, her eyes opening to find the fire reduced to ash and the place eerily still. The space beside it, where Talon had been sitting, was empty. Her heart jolted. She sat up quickly, calling softly, "Talon?" No answer. She stepped to the cave entrance. Outside, the world was washed clean by rain. The canyon glittered under the early sun, drops of water hanging like tiny jewels from the edges of rocks and cactus thorns. But of the Apache warrior, there was no trace. No footprints, no sound of hooves, nothing. It was as if the desert had swallowed him whole. For a long time, Evelyn just stood there, staring into the emptiness. Something deep inside her sank an ache that words couldn't name. She had known him for only a few hours, and yet his presence had burned through her memory like fire through dry grass. She packed her things slowly, but before leaving, she noticed something near the fire pit. A small token woven from horsehair and sinew, with 2 white feathers tied in a cross. She picked it up carefully, realizing it wasn't decoration. It was a clan mark, a sign of the White Hawk. Evelyn closed her fingers around it, feeling its rough texture. "You left me something," she whispered. "But why?" She rode for hours through the open desert, the wind tugging at her shawl. Her mind replayed every glance, every word, every silence shared in that cave. The way he spoke of the past, the sadness in his eyes, the tenderness hidden beneath the strength. By midday, she reached a small outpost called Copper Bend, a lonely place with a trading post, a stable, and a single saloon where dust collected thicker than conversation. She dismounted, her legs aching, and walked inside. The saloon was nearly empty except for an old barkeep cleaning glasses and 2 travelers playing cards. When Evelyn asked if anyone had seen an Apache man pass through, the barkeep frowned. "Apache, you say?" "Not lately," he muttered. "Not since the soldiers cleared out the White Hawk camp 2 months ago. Ain't none left around here." Her heart skipped. 2 months ago? He nodded. Most were driven north. Some never made it. Evelyn felt a chill crawl up her spine. "You're saying there were survivors?" "Maybe a few," the barkeep said, shrugging. "But if you saw one out here, miss, I'd reckon you met a ghost." The words hit her harder than she expected. A ghost. That night, Evelyn stayed in a small room above the saloon. The bed was stiff, the air thick with tobacco and rain-soaked dust. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Talon's face, the glint of firelight on his skin, the way his voice lingered like wind through canyon stone. She got up and lit a candle. From her bag, she took out the small clan token he had left behind. Turning it over in her hands, she noticed something she hadn't before: tiny carvings burned into the back. The shape of a hawk, and below it, a single symbol she didn't recognize. She traced it with her finger. Somehow, it felt like a message meant for her. In the following days, Evelyn couldn't let go. She asked everyone she met about the White Hawk clan, about any Apache man named Talon, but the stories were few and shadowed tales of warriors who refused to surrender, of raids long ended, of people who vanished into the mountains rather than live under another's law. And yet, late one afternoon, as she was preparing to leave Copper Bend, she saw him. Far on the ridge beyond the town, a solitary rider stood against the sky tall, bare-chested, his long hair catching the wind. Even at a distance, she knew it was him. Her heart leapt. She called his name, but the sound was carried away by the wind. When she looked again, he was gone. Evelyn stood frozen, staring at the empty horizon. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she had seen a living man or a memory made real by longing. But deep in her chest, she knew one thing for certain: her story with Talon wasn't finished. Not yet. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, he was still there, and she would find him. Days turned into weeks, and still Evelyn couldn't shake the memory of him, the Apache named Talon, who had vanished like mist after a single night. His voice, his eyes, even the silence they shared haunted her waking hours. It wasn't love she felt, it was something deeper, stranger. It was as if her soul had brushed against something eternal and now refused to rest. She left Copper Bend behind, following the rivers, the trails, and any whisper of Apache presence in the desert. Most called her foolish, a lone woman riding through outlaw lands, chasing a man who might not even exist. But Evelyn wasn't chasing a man anymore. She was chasing meaning. One evening, after a long day of travel through red rock valleys, she stopped at an old trading post near the edge of the Sierra Plains. The place was nearly abandoned, save for an old prospector sitting outside whittling wood. His face was cracked like the earth, his beard white as salt. "You look like you're chasing ghosts," he said when she asked about the White Hawk clan. "Maybe I am," she answered softly. He looked up, studying her. "There's a story," he said finally, "about a warrior they called Talon. Said he was the last of the White Hawks. Fought the soldiers alone for 3 days when they burned his village. Took an arrow through the chest and still vanished into the canyon. Some say he died. Some say he walks the spirit world now." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Do you believe that?" The old man's eyes narrowed. "I seen the canyon myself. Men say they've heard drums echoing at night. Some say the warrior guards what's left of his people's ground. I tell you not to go looking. That land don't take kindly to strangers." But she had already decided. The next morning, Evelyn rode out before dawn. The air was sharp and dry, the horizon painted in pink and gold. As she entered the canyon the prospector had described, she felt the world grow quieter. The only sound was the echo of her horse's hooves and the soft rustle of wind between the rocks. She found the remains of what must have once been a camp, a few broken arrows, a charred fire ring, and bones half buried in the sand. She dismounted, her heart heavy. For the first time, she wondered if Talon really had been a spirit all along, a dream brought to her by a lonely night and desert firelight. Then she saw it. Carved into the canyon wall, half hidden by time, was the same hawk symbol she'd seen on the token he'd left behind. Beneath it, faint but visible, were markings that seemed like words. Evelyn brushed the dust away and whispered as she traced the shapes with her fingers. "Walk where the wind leads," she murmured, trying to read the fading script. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a horse's distant whinny. Her heart leapt. She spun around, eyes scanning the cliffs, but the echo died quickly, swallowed by the canyon. Night fell faster than she expected. She built a small fire and sat beneath the stars, clutching the token tightly. The wind carried whispers through the rocks, and though she knew it was only the desert playing tricks, she thought she heard his voice. "Remember the night the desert was kind to you." Tears welled in her eyes. "Where are you, Talon?" She whispered into the darkness. The fire flickered low. Then, from the shadows near the canyon mouth, something moved, a tall figure, silent, steady, almost unreal in the moonlight. Evelyn rose, her breath caught between fear and hope. He stepped forward, the flames revealing him fully. The same muscular form, the same long black hair and tribal beads, his bare skin glinting with the sheen of moonlight and sand. His expression was calm, but his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, were full of sorrow. "Talon," she breathed. "You're alive." He didn't speak right away. His gaze traveled over her face, her dusty clothes, her trembling hands. "You should not have come here," he said quietly. "I had to," she replied, her voice breaking. "You disappeared without a word." "I couldn't forget." He stepped closer, the air between them heavy with everything unsaid. "Some things are not meant to be remembered," he said, his tone deep and aching. But you carried the fire with you. Evelyn reached out, almost touching his arm, but before she could, he turned away, looking toward the canyon beyond. Leave before dawn, he said softly. If you stay, you'll never leave this place. And then, just as suddenly as before, he walked back into the shadows, vanishing again into the endless, haunted desert. Evelyn stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The wind howled through the rocks, and the stars above seemed to shimmer like tears. She whispered into the darkness, "Then I will stay until you come back." Evelyn didn't leave. Not when the wind howled like ghosts. Not when the canyon turned black with night. She sat by the dying fire, clutching the token Talon had left her, her heart pounding with the echo of his voice. Leave before dawn. If you stay, you'll never leave this place. But she stayed, because she knew what haunted him wasn't the desert, it was his past. And something in her refused to let him face it alone. When the first light touched the red cliffs, she rose and followed the path he'd taken into the canyon's deeper shadows. The air grew cooler as she walked, the walls narrowing until they were barely wide enough for her horse. Strange carvings covered the stonehawks, suns, spirals, all telling stories she couldn't read. Then she saw smoke rising in the distance. She dismounted quietly and walked the rest of the way on foot. Beyond a cluster of boulders lay a hidden hollow. There, she saw him. Talon knelt beside a low fire, his bare back to her, the morning sun catching in his long black hair. Around him were stone markers, each decorated with beads and feathers. Graves. Evelyn froze, realization washing over her. This was no ordinary canyon. It was a burial ground, the final resting place of his people. Talon, she whispered. He turned slowly, his face unreadable, though his eyes betrayed a storm of emotion. You should not be here, he said, standing to his full height. I followed you, she said softly, because I had to understand. There is nothing here for you. His voice was sharper now, more wounded than angry. This is where my blood sleeps. My father, my brothers, my people. When the soldiers came, they took everything but this. Evelyn looked at the graves, her throat tightening. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't come to take anything from you. I just couldn't leave you alone in your sorrow. He stared at her for a long time. Then, with a sigh that sounded like surrender, he said, You are braver than most who walk these lands. He gestured for her to come closer. She stepped into the hollow carefully, her boots crunching on the sand. The air felt sacred thick with memory and grief. Talon knelt beside one of the graves, pressing his hand to the earth. My mother, he said quietly. She told me before she died that love is the wind, you can feel it, but never hold it. I thought she was wrong. But now I see. Evelyn's heart ached. You think I'm just wind? He turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. No, you are the fire that the wind feeds. But fire burns what it touches. His words cut deep, but she didn't turn away. Then let me burn, she whispered. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence between them felt heavy and trembling, as if the desert itself were listening. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His skin was rough and warm, his touch steady but hesitant, like a man afraid of breaking something fragile. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the space between grief and love vanished. The world fell away until there was only the sound of their breathing and the desert wind moving softly through the stones. Talon leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. If you stay, he murmured, you will be bound to this land as I am. You will never be free. I've been a ghost since my husband died, Evelyn whispered. If I find my soul again, even here, then maybe that's freedom enough. His expression softened, pain, longing, disbelief all mixing into one quiet look that said more than words ever could. For the rest of that day, they stayed together in the hollow, speaking little. She helped him tend the fire, shared water, and listened as he told her stories of the White Hawks, how they lived, how they died, how their songs once echoed through these very canyons. When dusk came, the desert turned gold and purple. Evelyn watched him stand over the graves, chanting softly in a language she didn't know. The sound was beautiful and broken, like a prayer carried away by time. And when he turned to her, she saw it in his eyes, something that wasn't just sorrow anymore. It was acceptance. That night, when he reached for her hand again beneath the stars, she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel lost. She had found something that felt like home, even if it was in a place the world had forgotten. The wind howled through the canyon like a restless ghost. The stars above stretched wide and endless, glimmering across the desert sky as if they, too, were watching the moment unfold. Evelyn sat by the fire, her shawl clutched tight, her heart thundering in her chest. Across from her, Koda, the Apache warrior whose name she could barely whisper without trembling, stood silent, his face half lit by the flames. The shadows played along his powerful frame. Every muscle spoke of strength and survival, yet his eyes carried something softer, something that reached deep into her, unearthing feelings she had long buried beneath years of loneliness. "Why did you come back?" he asked quietly, his voice deep as the night itself. Evelyn's lips parted, but the words tangled in her throat. "Because I never forgot," she managed to say. "I tried, Koda. I left. I built a life, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw you. I heard your voice in the wind. I felt you near me, even when I was miles away." Koda's gaze dropped to the ground, and he knelt near the fire. "That night was never meant to happen," he murmured. "You were lost. I should have guided you to safety and left. But you didn't," she said, her voice trembling. "You stayed. You held me through the night when I was broken." His eyes lifted to hers, reflecting the flame's glow. "And that one night has haunted me ever since." Silence wrapped around them. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the low hum of the desert wind brushing over stone and sand. Evelyn felt her heart breaking, but also healing in the same breath. "I don't want this to be just a memory," she whispered. "I don't care about what the world says, white woman, Apache man, it doesn't matter to me. Not anymore." Koda rose slowly, the firelight painting his bronze skin with gold. He looked at her with an expression that was both longing and resignation. "Evelyn," he said, his voice firm yet heavy with sadness, "you belong to a world that will never understand mine. And I cannot leave my people. The spirits tied me to this land long before you ever walked into my life." She stood too, her eyes fierce despite the tears glistening there. "Then let me stay. I don't need walls or comfort or society. I just need—" Her words broke as Koda reached out and touched her cheek. His hand was rough and warm, carrying the scent of smoke and earth. "You don't know what you ask," he said. "This life is not meant for you. You would suffer." "Then let me suffer with you," she replied. He stared at her for a long time, his jaw tightening as the night pressed close. Then slowly he pulled her into his arms. For a moment, the world disappeared. The stars blurred. The desert fell away. There was only the heat of his skin, the rhythm of his heartbeat against hers, and the deep ache that love leaves behind when it's both forbidden and true. When he finally spoke again, his words were a whisper against her hair. "If I stay with you tonight," he said, "it will be the last time." Her breath caught. "Why?" "Because dawn will take me from this world," he said. "My path was written long before you found me again. Tomorrow, I must answer the spirit's call. I cannot escape it." Evelyn pulled back, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No, Koda." You can't mean that. You can't leave me again. Koda smiled sadly. Some bonds are not meant to last in flesh, but in soul. You will feel me in every wind that passes your face. I will not be gone, not truly. She broke down, her tears falling freely as he held her close. Just one more night, she whispered. That's all I ask. He nodded, pressing his forehead against hers. One more night. The fire flickered low, the stars shimmered above, and the desert held its breath as two souls divided by worlds yet bound by something eternal surrendered once more to the love that had never died. That night, Evelyn knew no matter what dawn would bring, she would never forget Koda. Not in this life, nor in the next. The horizon was still dark when Evelyn opened her eyes. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and sage. She felt Koda's warmth beside her, the steady rise and fall of his chest, and for a moment she wished time would stop right there forever, caught in that fragile stillness between night and dawn. She turned to look at him. His face was calm, peaceful, yet there was something distant in it, as if he already belonged to another world. The flicker of dying firelight danced over the tribal markings across his chest, the turquoise and bone jewelry resting against his skin. Every line of him seemed carved by fate itself, beautiful, fierce, and untamed. Koda, she whispered, touching his shoulder gently. He stirred, his dark eyes opening slowly. It's time, he said, his voice deep, quiet, but resolute. Evelyn's throat tightened. You don't have to go. Stay with me. We can leave ride west, start new. Nobody has to know. He shook his head. You don't understand, Evelyn. My blood, my spirit, they belong to this land, to the people who wait beyond the veil of this world. I cannot run from what I am. Tears stung her eyes. You talk like you're already gone. He smiled faintly, brushing his fingers through her hair. In some ways, I am. When I found you that night years ago, lost and broken, I thought you were just a passing soul. But you became my heartbeat. You gave me something I didn't think I deserved, peace. Evelyn clutched his hand tightly. Then let me come with you. Wherever you go, I'll follow. He looked at her, his gaze filled with both love and sorrow. No, your path is not with me. You have a life waiting out there, beyond these sands. You must live it. For both of us. The first blush of dawn began to touch the canyon rim, casting soft gold over the stone. Koda stood and faced the light, his long black hair shimmering like a river of night. The wind carried the faint whisper of a chant, low, rhythmic, almost otherworldly. Evelyn watched as he lifted his hands to the rising sun, his body strong and still, silhouetted against the awakening sky. What are you doing? She asked through her tears. Answering the call, he said, his voice carried by the wind. When a warrior's spirit is called home, he cannot refuse. Evelyn stumbled forward. No, you can't leave me like this. Koda turned, and for a moment, his face softened. You will not be alone. The wind will carry my words. The earth will remember my steps. When you close your eyes, you will hear me in your heart. Her knees gave out, and she sank to the sand, sobbing. I can't lose you again. He knelt before her, placing his hands gently on her cheeks. You never lost me, Evelyn. I was never truly yours to lose. Their lips met, soft and trembling, a kiss that tasted of tears and dust and eternity. When it broke, the light had grown stronger. A gust of wind swept through the canyon, lifting his hair and scattering the ashes of the dying fire. Evelyn blinked, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw him shimmer, his body fading into light, his form blending with the morning sun. Koda, she cried out, reaching for him. But when her hand closed, there was nothing there. Only the echo of his voice carried on the wind. When the wind touches your face, think of me. She sat there for hours, staring at the horizon where he had stood, her heart breaking yet strangely full. The world around her was silent except for the whisper of wind through the stones. Years passed. Evelyn returned to the town, her hair turning silver with time. She never remarried, never spoke much of the desert or the warrior she once knew. But every dawn she would walk to the ridge beyond her small home and stand in the rising light, eyes closed, feeling the wind against her face. And in those quiet moments she swore she could still hear him, the low hum of his voice, the promise he made under the stars. Some said she was mad. Others said she was blessed. But Evelyn knew the truth. She had spent one night with an Apache warrior, and that one night had become a lifetime etched into her soul. Because love, when born in the fire of the desert, never truly dies. It simply rides on the wind, forever searching for the one who still remembers.